Serafina Voss was not the kind of person people noticed when she walked into a room. She was quiet, careful, and always a little too still, the way a person becomes still when they have spent years learning that drawing attention rarely ends well. She lived at the edge of the Ashvale Pack's compound, in a small room with one narrow window, and she did her work without asking for recognition, and went to bed each night without expecting any. She was 22 years old and had never shifted. That was the fact that defined her in the eyes of everyone around her. A wolf who could not shift was not really a wolf. That was the common belief, spoken openly, without apology. She had heard it said so many times, in so many ways, that she had stopped reacting to it. She just kept working. The Ashvale Pack was led by Alpha Caden Varick, and he was, by every visible measure, exactly what an alpha was supposed to be. He was strong, fast, and sharp-minded. He made decisions quickly and stood behind them. His pack respected him. His rivals feared him. And on the evening of the monthly reckoning, the meeting where all pack business was reviewed openly, he looked at the record-keeper's list, saw Serafina's name, and said 4 words that the entire pack heard clearly. "She is worthless here." He did not say it with cruelty. That almost made it worse. He said it the way someone states a practical fact, the way a person might say a tool is too broken to fix. He went on to explain, calmly, that a pack member who had reached 22 years without a wolf had no future in the Ashvale Pack, and that she would be marked unclaimed and removed from the pack roster before the upcoming gathering of alphas. He did not look at her while he said any of this. Serafina stood in the 3rd row of the meeting hall and kept her face calm. Around her, she was aware of people not looking at her, that specific kind of not looking that people do when they feel guilty, but not enough to act on it. She accepted the unclaimed mark without speaking, without flinching, and she walked out of the hall with her head level. Back in her small room, she looked at her left wrist where the mark had been pressed. The skin was smooth, unmarked. She had felt the iron and the heat, but there was nothing there now. She pressed her fingers to her wrist and held them still for a moment. Then she folded her single good coat, packed her few belongings, and went to sleep early, because she intended to leave before sunrise. She walked to Varath. The neutral city was 3 days on foot, and she made the journey alone, carrying her bag over one shoulder, and moving steadily through open country, and then through the forest roads that connected the outer pack territories. She did not feel sorry for herself. She had found, over the years, that self-pity was heavy to carry, and did not improve the road. On the 2nd night, a storm moved in fast from the north, and she took shelter inside the hollow of a very large, very old oak tree, at the edge of the forest path. The hollow was dry and just wide enough. She pulled her coat close, and waited for the rain to pass. An old woman appeared at the entrance of the hollow. She had silver eyes, and she moved through the rain, as though it was not entirely sure it had the right to touch her. She carried nothing. She smelled of nothing. No pack, no territory, nothing Serafina could identify. In 22 years of being a wolf, Serafina had never met someone with no scent. She sat up straight. "You carry the oldest blood in these lands," the old woman said. She did not introduce herself. She did not ask if she could sit. She simply sat, and looked at Serafina, the way someone looks at a thing they have been waiting to see for a long time. It is called the pale wolf line. Every generation, it moves quietly through one child, sleeping, invisible, completely still, until the night the world needs it most. She reached into her coat and produced a small glass vial. The liquid inside it gave off a faint blue light that had nothing to do with the lightning moving through the clouds outside. "Drink this when you are afraid," she said. "Not before. Not when you feel ready or confident or strong. When you are genuinely afraid. Fear is the key." Serafina took the vial. She had questions. Many questions. But something in the old woman's manner made her feel that the answers would not help her as much as the experience would. She closed her fingers around the small glass tube and held it carefully. When she looked up, the old woman was gone. The rain was still falling. Serafina tucked the vial into the inner pocket of her coat, against her chest, and waited out the storm. Varath was a city built for exactly this kind of event. The gathering of alphas happened every 3 years. 12 alpha leaders from 12 different packs, competing for the title of Alpha King. The single wolf whose dominance was recognized across all territories. The city filled up. Banners hung from every wall. The great sand arena at the city's center had observation platforms on 4 sides, and every platform was full by the time Serafina arrived on the evening before the competition began. She was turned away from the registration desk twice. The third time, she placed her left wrist on the counter without speaking. The registrar, a woman who had run these events for nearly 2 decades, looked at the wrist. There was no visible mark, but she could feel the residue of the iron, the faint trace of a pack brand that had tried and failed to leave a scar. She looked at Serafina's face. She looked at the wrist again. There was no legal rule that could keep a wolf with a pack brand, even a failed one, from registering. The unclaimed designation was still a designation. The registrar wrote her name in the book. Serafina Voss, no affiliation. The laughter started before she had cleared the registration area and followed her down the corridor to the staging rooms. She did not speed up. She walked at exactly the same pace she had walked at before the laughter began. The other competitors were 11 alpha males. They ranged from quietly formidable to loudly confident, and every one of them had a wolf that had been visible and active since before their 12th birthday. They had trained for this. They had won regional competitions, defended their territories, built their reputations over years of visible, undeniable power. And now, because of a clerical technicality that nobody could quite figure out how to undo, there was also a small, quiet woman with no pack and no visible wolf standing in their staging area, reviewing the competition draw. Caden Varick was among them. He saw her across the room and went very still for a moment. Then he crossed the space between them and spoke quietly. "You were removed from the pack roster," he said. "I was removed from your pack roster," she said. "This competition belongs to no single pack." She looked at the draw sheet in her hand for one more moment, then set it down on the table beside her and walked away. He did not follow her. He stood in the same spot for a few seconds, and then he went back to his side of the room. But his wolf, which had been calm all evening, began to pace in a way that Caden could not explain and did not particularly want to examine. The competition began at moonrise. The rules were simple. Elimination bouts on the open sand, one opponent at a time, in whatever form the competitors chose. A bout ended when one wolf yielded, or was unable to continue. The 12 competitors would be reduced to 1 by morning. Serafina's first opponent was a large, confident alpha from the Crestfall territory, Darrow, who was known for ending bouts quickly and with very little effort. His wolf was enormous, gray and brown, and it arrived on the sand at full speed. The crowd leaned forward. Serafina stood still. She was in human form. She was also genuinely afraid, not of Darrow specifically, but of the size of the moment, the weight of every eye in that arena, the real possibility that everything the old woman had said was simply wrong, and she was about to discover that in front of thousands of people. The fear was cold and clear, and completely real. She let it move through her. She did not push it away, or try to replace it with confidence. She felt it fully, the way you feel cold water when you step into a river, the shock of it, and then the adjustment, and then the current. Something in the center of her chest shifted. It was not dramatic. It was more like a door, quietly unlocking. Darrow's wolf stopped. 6 feet from her, it stopped. Its legs did not fail. It did not trip or stumble. It simply stopped moving forward, and then it sat, and then it lowered its great head to the sand. The yield signal was called. The arena was silent. Then the next bout began. She moved through the competition the same way. No shifted form, no visible display of power, just stillness, and that quiet pressure that spread outward from her like heat from a fire, invisible, undeniable, older than any system of rank that the 12 packs had ever agreed on. One by one, the alphas came onto the sand, and one by one, their wolves recognized something that their minds could not categorize, and their instincts could not argue with. By the 5th bout, the platforms were at full attention. Pack leaders who had come to cheer for their own champions were watching Serafina instead. Conversations had stopped. People who had been eating or moving around had gone still. The registrar who had written Serafina's name in the book was writing something in her personal notebook, which she had never once opened during an official event. Caden watched from the staging area. He did not go to the observation platform. He stood near the entrance to the sand, and watched each bout with complete attention, and his wolf paced inside him, in a way that was not aggression, and was not submission, but was something he did not have a word for yet. The eighth bout was different. Gareth of the Northern Reach was 50 years old, and had never yielded to anyone in his life. His reputation was built on endurance, not just physical endurance, but the kind of deep, stubborn refusal to bend that some wolves developed over decades of holding hard territory in difficult conditions. He came onto the sand in human form, which meant he was not planning to make things simple. He felt the pressure when it reached him. Everyone could see that he felt it. His stride changed slightly, the way a person's walk changes when they are pushing against a strong wind. But he kept walking. His jaw was set. His wolf was fighting his own stubbornness from the inside, and the stubbornness was winning, barely, and he kept coming. Seraphina reached into her coat. Her fingers found the small glass vial. She was afraid, more afraid than she had been all night, because this was the moment when the thing the old woman had promised might simply fail to arrive, and she would be alone on this sand, with no explanation and no backup. The fear was real and large, and she felt all of it. She drank the vial. What happened next was described differently by every person who witnessed it, but they all agreed on the essential shape of the moment. A wolf appeared beside her, white, the color of moonlight on still water, larger than any wolf any of them had ever seen in person. It did not growl. It did not move toward Gareth. It simply stood at her shoulder with a quality of presence that was not threatening, but was completely, fundamentally impossible to ignore. Gareth stopped walking, his knees bent. He did not choose this. It was visible on his face that he did not choose it, but his body made the decision for him. Recognizing something so far above the hierarchy, it understood that it responded the only way it knew how. He yielded. 3 more bouts followed. They were shorter than the ones before them. At 4 in the morning, with the stars beginning to thin toward dawn, Seraphina stood at the center of the sand, and Caden Varric walked out to meet her. The white wolf stood at her side. It did not disappear when the vial ran out. It had simply decided, it seemed, that it was done hiding. Caden walked onto the sand without his pack escort, without handlers, without any of the ceremony that surrounded him everywhere else. He walked the way a person walks when they have made a decision and are committed to it, regardless of the outcome. He stopped 10 feet from her. His wolf shifted, dark, controlled, careful. It moved forward slowly, not charging, not posturing, and when it reached the edge of the space between them, it lay down on the sand. Its head rested on its paws. It looked up at Seraphina's wolf, with an expression that is not easy to describe in human language, but that every wolf in that arena understood completely. Caden stood in human form beside his wolf, and looked at Seraphina directly. "My wolf recognizes yours," he said. His voice was quieter than usual. "Not weak, just honest. It recognized it the moment I saw you across the staging room. I did not understand what I was feeling, and I should have looked more carefully before I said what I said in the meeting hall. I was wrong about you." Seraphina looked at him for a long moment. The white wolf at her side was completely still. "You were wrong about what I was," she said, "but I was standing in front of you the entire time." "I know," he said. He yielded. Formally, by name, by title, in front of every pack leader and every historian and every person still standing in that arena in the last hour before dawn. The ceremony was short. The title of Alpha King was given to Seraphina Voss. No affiliation. The first woman, the first unmated wolf, and the first packless competitor in the 500-year history of the gathering. The historians wrote quickly. The pack leaders were quiet in the specific way that powerful people go quiet when the world has just shown them something they were not prepared for. She stood on the steps of the Varath arena and watched the sky lighten from black to deep blue to the first pale suggestion of morning. The vial in her coat pocket was empty and warm from being carried close to her body for 3 days. The white wolf stood beside her, visible to anyone who looked, in no hurry to go anywhere. Caden came to find her after the crowd had thinned. He did not have a speech prepared. He stood beside her on the steps and looked at the same sky she was looking at. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," she said, "I go back to the 12 packs, and I do the work." She paused. "The same work I was always doing, just from a different position." He was quiet for a moment. And the Ashvale pack? She turned to look at him. That depends on the Ashvale pack, she said simply. There was nothing more to say, and both of them seemed to understand that. The sun came fully over the horizon, and the light hit the sand of the arena below them, and for a moment, it was very bright, and very clear, and very still. Serafina walked down the steps and into the new morning. The white wolf walked beside her. Neither of them looked back, not because there was nothing behind them worth looking at, but because there was already too much ahead.